Okay, it is 5:15 now, so I think we should get started. So first of all, I'm just going to hand over to Liz, and she's just going to do a very quick little introduction.
Hi everyone, thank you Naomi. It's Liz again. Some of you have met me before, some of you haven't, I think. We had an amazing Superstar workshop yesterday, which was really fun, and we were throwing toasts around the room and stuff, which is very strange and definitely the most fun I've had at work for a long time. I don't think we're going to do toast related activities today, but just to say we're really lucky to have Naomi with us again to facilitate this workshop. I just wanted to say thank you so much for carving out even more time to do this project. I just wanted to also remind you that you have all an entitlement to take part in a fully funded CPD course. So they're normally payable, but STEM Learning and the GLA are offering them to you for free if you book before and attend before the 31st of March. So I'm going to add to the chat the link to, I think, oh God, I really hope it's this one and not some other random link I've just copied. You should be able to see the brochure there. Some of you who already booked on, so thank you for that. Also, just to give you a heads up that we'll be doing a online exhibition from Science Week. I'll send you more details, but essentially you can do part of your or all of your sharing, the sharing components of your CREST projects by uploading pictures of your students doing their CREST projects or the projects themselves onto the mayor's website. And we'll also make sure that the mayor has a look and hopefully makes a video. I've got a call in for him to make a video for all of you. So hopefully that goes through. And we're going to be drawing amazing prizes every month. A school science show from the Royal Institution, our trusted partners as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Naomi now, but I'm here if you have any questions and I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. So what we're going to be doing this afternoon is focusing on the CREST discovery and particularly thinking about how to deliver it remotely. It may be that we do go back to school and you're going to be able to deliver it in person, or it may be that we're still not at school and you're going to be delivering it remotely, or it may be that you're back at school but you choose to deliver it remotely as part of home learning or homework. So hopefully I'm going to give you a range of tools and ways that you can adapt the CREST discovery resources to suit remote learning. So what I'm actually going to do is show you how it's really quite easy to break down a discovery activity into smaller chunks so that you can actually deliver it more successfully through remote learning. And I'm just going to use one specific example. I've chosen an example that I felt was easy for the children to do at home with resources that they will have at home, but you may well choose to do a different activity, but the process will be the same. You'll still be breaking it down in the same way. So whether you choose to do the one that we're doing this afternoon or a different one, hopefully you'll find the workshop relevant to you. So just as a little reminder of what a CREST Discovery Award is, it's basically a project. So it's a more extensive project than if you were a primary school and you're doing the Superstar Award. So it's predominantly 10 to 14-year-olds that engage in the projects. They're all open-ended, student-led, inquiry-based projects linked to the real-world context. And that's really important. It's not just some random thing. It's got to be linked to a real-world context. And often they're used for STEM enrichment days. And we're going to look at one particular one, and I will show you the timetable for what it would look like if you were to run it as a day, what it would look like if you chose to run it as like as part of a STEM club. So maybe an hour slots, 5 or 4 hour slots, and then what it would look like if you're perhaps breaking it down and doing it as remote learning. But just a quick reminder that for any CREST award, it involves the children using those skills: investigation, planning, decision making, problem solving, team working and communication. That is the same regardless of what CREST award your children are doing. So there are two ways in the past that these CREST Discovery Awards have been gained, and there's advantages for both. So running it as a STEM day, so running it as one chunk, probably in secondary school when there's an off timetable day, or primary school where you're able just to devote the whole day to doing the activity. And it just means that children really get engrossed in it over an extended period of time. And it just means that they can come back and keep reflecting and keep developing and think about how things are going and develop it through that day. So they just get really immersed in it. Whereas if you're running it as 4 or 5 individual sessions, it may be more appropriate for your students because actually they're getting it in smaller doses. It's shorter, it's easier to capture the children's attention for that length of time. One session will build on the next. So at the start of the second session, you'll be recapping what did we do in the first session. So you're revisiting it rather than just sort of ploughing through. And it actually just might be more convenient. It might be easier for you to run. So there are two ways that the CREST Award is already set up to be delivered. But what we're going to be thinking about particularly today is how you might deliver it in a remote situation. I have chosen to use one of the Practical Action STEM challenges. Practical Action are a partner of the BSA as far as STEM challenges and CREST Awards is concerned. They are one of the other regional CREST support organisations. My company is the regional CREST support organisation for London, and Practical Action actually cover a different area, but all or many of their activities are already accredited for CREST Awards, so it's a really nice place to go, and you've just had the link posted onto the chat for you. So the particular activity that we're going to be doing, this is what it might look like as a one-day project. So you can see we've got our break and our lunch break put into there, but it's still broken down into separate sessions to help you plan and keep on track of the time. So you can see there's a starter activity to get the children thinking about the context, what they're going to be doing for the day, getting them engaged. Then there's an introduction to the specific challenge that they're going to be doing, the specific problem that they've got. With this particular activity and many of the Practical Actions ones, it links to the Sustainable Development Goals, so a little bit of time to think about that. Then they have a break, then they start with the main activity, which is where they'll be starting to think about the challenge they've got specifically, doing some research, doing their planning. Then they have their lunch, then they've got their model building and testing stage, and then there's that all-important feedback. For any CREST Award, there is that opportunity. The children are given that opportunity to feedback what they found out. With this particular activity, they're also shown what the solution is that Practical Action provide for the situation that it's all about. And then the idea is that there's a little bit of reflection where the children or students complete their CREST Discovery Passport. So that's what it looks like as a day. Nothing changes as far as it being a 4-part session. The CREST Award is 5 hours. This particular activity, it's got 4 hours there, but you would probably you would be developing it a little bit anyway with what you feel you want the students to spend a little bit more time on. But you can see there, it's all exactly the same thing. It's just been broken down into those hour sessions rather than the one day. And what we're going to do this afternoon is look at it in terms of how would you do it as remote. And you can see it's exactly the same down there on the left-hand side, and the center columns are all the same. It's just the delivery that's going to be different. So some of it might be live delivery where you are actually talking to the students as I'm talking to you. And for that first one, it's going to be some live delivery, and then I'm going to send you into breakout rooms to do some group work. And that's something that you can then think about, how do you manage that with your students, probably with your Google Classrooms or whatever systems you're using. You may well be able to do that, so they can still do some group work. There's a little bit of independent work, so the students actually do something on their own. Then there's another live delivery and group work session, a little bit of independent group work, another live session and independent. So you can see it's broken up into smaller chunks with different types of delivery happening. So the first part that we're going to look at is this starter activity. So now we're going to be more specific about one of those particular challenges. So what you're going to be doing when you go into your breakout rooms, you're going to be able to view a number of photographs. And the first thing that I would like you to do is just talk about what you see in the photographs. Where do you think they are? What are the problems that the people are experiencing? So first you'll have a little bit of a discussion around that. And then I want you to start thinking about what different ways can you group those photographs. There may be one obvious way, but actually if you think more carefully, you may be able to group those photos in a number of different ways. And what we're going to do, the way that this activity, you can see how it would run in the class. You'd have the photos there. The children would be talking about them in their groups. They'd be shuffling them around and moving them. Absolutely fine. We can't do that this way. So we're going to use a Jamboard. And if people are not familiar with a Jamboard, I am just going to open it up and show you how to use it so you're familiar with it. The link has just been posted onto the chat for you. So you will be able to see the photographs there. I'm just going to stop screen sharing and actually show you the Jamboard that you will be seeing. Okay, so this is what your Jamboard will look like. And when you put you into your groups and you go into your breakout rooms, if you can just take note of which breakout room you're in, and then you will use the relevant page. So this would be, you can see there it says slide 1. So if you're breakout room 1, you'll be looking at these pictures. If you're breakout room 2, you'll be looking at these pictures. And then what I'd like you to do is once you've talked about them and you've started to think about, you can actually then move them around. So you could actually physically move them and start grouping them together in whatever way that you want. I'll just try and put those back a little bit. And then what also, once you've thought about one way of sorting them, if you just want to use this text box or a sticky note, you can then just type something. So if you've thought about one way of sorting it, just type the way that you sorted it, and then you can go back and sort it another way and do another text box. Or if you prefer to use the sticky notes, then you can use a sticky note and post that as well. Okay, so in your breakout rooms, I'm just going to get rid of that so that doesn't surprise people when they arrive. So in your breakout rooms, first it's a discussion about the photographs, then start sorting and grouping them. And if you can put a sticky note on for the different ways that you've sorted, then that would be absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes just to talk about those pictures. Probably the children would need more than that, but your adults and you can tend to do things a little bit more quickly. Okay, if we can open the breakout rooms. Okay, thank you very much. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of time to think about those pictures and reflect on those a little bit. I'm just going to share with you what group 3 were doing there. So they came up with a number of different ways that they were sorting it and got lots of nice comments on the chat there on the Jamboard for me there. So the first thing that actually popped up on everybody's was that idea of flooding and drought. But then they've started to think about some of them. You can see that there's evacuation going on. Some of them are urban, some of them are non-urban. There's the impact on agriculture in some of them is going to be clear, whereas on others it's not. And then also where it is in the world. Is it a developed country or a developing country? So there's a really nice set of ideas that that group had posted and shared there for me. So thank you for that. Let's just go back to our slides. So you can see that's an activity that you can just deliver. You have that little bit of input, then you can ask the children to discuss it in whatever format you're able to use with the platforms that you're using. And then we can come back and they can share their ideas. If you're using a Jamboard like that, you could probably go in and see what, well, you can see what the other groups were doing as well. So it's just a really nice way of the children able to interact with each other while still remotely. And then the other beautiful thing is that I didn't have to go into the breakout rooms, but I could see what you were doing. As soon as I go into a breakout room, it can sometimes disrupt what's going on, but at the same time, I can see what's going on. And as a teacher, if you felt you needed to intervene, then you would be able to pop into that room and talk to the children and then come back and leave them again. So it's just a nice way of seeing what's going on. Jamboard, if you've not used Jamboard, you just find it's one of your Google apps, and it's free to use. It's really easy to set up. Yeah, just do have a little play with it if that's something you might find useful. So this particular task is based around flooding and drought, and I think that was one of the ways that probably all of the groups thought about it. And there are lots of countries that suffer from flooding and drought. And the problem is it's getting worse. And some, I think it was group two typed about climate change. At this point, does anybody want to type on the chat any other countries that you know struggle with flooding or drought? This is very much about giving the children an opportunity to think about what they already know, and which is good for developing their science capital. They don't come to this activity knowing nothing, so let's just think about what do we already know. Okay, so thank you. We've got people typing on the chat there. So Australia definitely suffers from drought at periods of the time. The UK, we suffer from a little bit of both, but perhaps not as extreme as some of the other countries. We've got Bangladesh there is a country that suffers from extreme flooding. So that's the thing. Oh, Peru and Brazil, okay, I don't even know these places, but your children may have got families living in these places. Okay, you've picked it up from a Royal Institution lecture. It's just really good for the children to be able to share what experiences they have got. Some of them may well have been caught up in a flood or a drought. We don't know. We just need to invite them to tell us. So thank you for that. Let's move on. So the particular country that we're going to be focusing on, you've got a couple of clues there, and you're going to get a couple more clues. So what country do you think we're going to be focusing on? Do feel free, if you already know the answer, type it onto the chat. I will just give you your next two clues. Okay. So there we've got it. Okay, and as you have correctly identified, it is Bangladesh. What I'd like you to do is type anything else you know about Bangladesh. Has anybody been there? Is anybody from there? Has anybody got relatives there? What else do you know? What do you know about the religion there? What do you know about the sort of food they eat there? Thank you. Again, we want the children to feel connected in whatever way they can. Okay, so they speak Sylheti. Somebody's got neighbours from there. Lots of fish dishes. Why is that? I love Mo's focused on food. Absolutely great. If that's what you know about, that's what you share. It's all about sharing what you know. Okay, thank you. And the nice thing about asking an open-ended question like that is that everybody's probably got something they can say. Yes, whether it's from Nadia from Bake Off, everybody's got something to say about it, and that just means that everybody feels engaged in the process. Okay, so here's some information about, so we're now sort of focusing a little bit more on the problem. So floods are affecting over 1 million people every year in Bangladesh. Due to climate change, the rainy season's got longer, can last up to 6 months of the year. And families who used to grow crops to feed their families and sell at market are no longer able to do so. So you can imagine that that is a real big impact that climate change is having on that community. Here you can see we've got a map of Bangladesh, and you can see the river and the offshoots running through it there. And you can see how much of the country is actually flooded and affected by those floods. We could have that question there. Why is it that the worst area is in pink? I'm not going to insult your intelligence with that one, but obviously it's where they're closest to the river is where the flooding is going to have a greatest impact. So then we want to make it even more personal. So this is Tara, and she lives with her family in Gobanda in northern Bangladesh. She's had to move 7 times because their home keeps getting flooded. The land keeps getting flooded and is getting washed away by the floods. So they now got a small piece of land, 800 square meters, which is actually owned by the government, but it's still prone to flooding. So they really need to find a different way to grow their crops. So at this point, we're not going to ask you to do this activity, but all the practical action activities link back to those sustainable development goals. And it's quite nice for your children to become aware of those. So this might be an independent little bit where they go off, and we've just posted a link there to a website with those 17 sustainable goals there. So they might want to have a little look through those to become familiar with them and start to thinking about, well, actually, if we could solve this problem from Tara, actually, what development goal would that be linked to? What is it helping to achieve? Okay, so that might be something that you set them off on a little bit of independent research, thinking about how those development goals link back to Tara in particular. So we've introduced those, we send them off to research them, and I've just probably gone through all that. I'll just leave you to read that slide about the development goals. Okay, and they've got a date by which, I've forgotten what the date is now, but there's a date by which in ID, I think it might be 2030, maybe you could have a little look, Bennett, and post that on there, where they're trying to basically deal with all these issues. If we can deal with all these issues across the world, then the world would definitely be a better place. And those are the 17, 2030. So if we can solve all of these problems by 2030, then we will have met the United Nations task, their objective. We're probably going to be a way off because we're already in 2021, but let's dream big. And for a lot of your students, they are so aware of climate change. They're so aware of these things, and they really want to be part of the solution. And we're going to have to rely on them being part of the solution. It is them that's going to solve these problems in the future. So getting them thinking about it now is really important. So they've learned about those sustainable development goals, and now we're going to move on to the particular challenge that they're going to be solving. So I'm going to present that challenge for you, and then they would be going away and having a think about it. I'm going to send you off to do that in just a moment. So the problem is we've got this flooding, and we're just introducing them to the work of practical action, and they work with a lot of work in a lot of places, and here we've got Asfari Begum, who's working particularly in Bangladesh. And what we want the students to think about is, imagine that they're working for practical action in Bangladesh, and you've talked to a number of these people like Tara and thought about their experiences, and that they've told you that basically they've got no land to grow their crops on. The land just disappears. So they're not able to feed themselves. They basically rely on growing their crops to feed themselves, or actually selling that food in the market so they can buy different food or other things that they need. So it's really having a real detrimental effect on their lives. So what I want you to think about, your challenge is this. You need to create, you're going to design, and later on you would be building, but we're not going to be able to do that this afternoon, but you're going to design some sort of structure that means those people can grow their crops on it even when the land becomes flooded. So if you're doing this for real, you'd be working with the scientists and engineers and the local community. And what practical action is really clear about, it's not going in and solving a problem for them. It's actually working with the community to find a solution that really works for them. And therefore, it's got to be something that's inexpensive. It's got to be sustainable. It's not something that you have to keep, they keep having to keep buying for themselves. It's got to be using the materials available to them. And that's actually the nice thing about the students having to do it from home. It's almost like actually they're really in that situation. What can I use around my house? What's accessible to me to be able to solve this problem with what I can use? So it's really actually trying to put them in that situation. They haven't got any swanky kit. They're not a school where they can ask you for things. They've just got to look around their houses and see what they can use. And actually that forces them to be more creative. And then, of course, they are going to have to present this later. So they need to be thinking about that all the way through. So to help them with keeping track of what they've been doing, they will be having the Discovery Passport. That is a reflection tool for the students to fill in as they're going through their project. Each student is assessed on their own, but they do work within a group on the whole. But it's important that you feel confident that all the students have engaged in all parts of the process. So you would be reminding them as they're going through to update their passports, and maybe their passports are something that you can store within your Google Classrooms or the platforms that you're using, so that you can actually keep a little eye on them and check that they are completing them as they're going through. And then at the end of the day, or at the end of the activity, at the end of the project, whenever it comes to an end, you'll just be able to look through those, provided the students have completed the passport and you know that they've engaged in it. They are eligible for their Discovery Awards. You only need to worry about a particular student if you feel they haven't engaged fully. So it's just the passport that you would be looking at. So when you go into your breakout rooms, I want you to think about these questions. You might want to take a little photograph of those screens so you've got those questions to think about. What I'd like you to do ideally is actually, if one of you has got a bit of pen and paper and you can actually draw a couple of designs, a few ideas that you've got. I'm going to give you about probably maybe not quite 10 minutes, but certainly a substantial amount of time. Try and come up with a few different ideas, different approaches that might be used. If you want to think about how they can also keep their chickens safe, then go for it. Okay, so if we were going to be doing this later, your model is going to have to fit in the bowl. But at this point in time, we're not worrying about the model. We're just thinking about some initial designs. So in your breakout rooms, just thinking about these questions in particular. How are you going to keep your crops safe from the flood? How are you going to stop them getting washed away? You don't want to end up in your neighbour's plot and them have all your crops. And how are your crops going to grow on your solution, in your solution, with your solution? If you can nominate somebody in your group who's going to do some drawings, what I'd like to do is when you come back, I might ask a few people to actually hold their drawings up to the screen and perhaps talk through. So if you can nominate somebody to draw, and maybe that person will be able to give a little bit of feedback when you come back into the rooms. Okay, so we're going to pop you back into the breakout rooms now for about 5 to 10 minutes. And please do come back. Make sure somebody comes back with a drawing of your design or of a few designs that you've come up with. Okay, thank you very much. That should be everybody back now. So I'm hoping that we've got some drawings that you're going to be able to share. This is not a perfect way of doing it. Probably it would be easier to take photographs and upload it and that sort of thing. But we're just going to do a hold it in front of the camera. So if somebody, the nominated person from room 3, I'm going to surprise room 3. So that was either Ade, Megan, or Mo.
We create like a raft.
Yep.
Where we have made out of bamboo, a bamboo raft poles, and then on the raft we have banana leaves. The reason why we chose banana leaves to cover the raft is because it's impermeable. It acts as an impermeable sheet. So the flood waters is not going to be able to penetrate the crops, which is going to be above it. So on top of the banana leaf will be soil where we plan to grow the crops. And as you can see around the edges, we have some banana, we have a barricade made out of banana poles, bamboo poles, which is a sort of, is a barricade basically to prevent the water coming in as well. And then we put it on some stilts. What did we, made out of banana poles as well. And the reason why we put it on stilts is to give it a sort of height. So in case of the flood, it is above the flood waters. But what we got to just before we came out of the breakout room was looking at how to anchor those poles to the ground, because it's going to have to be able to be sturdy enough to prevent it from being washed away by the flood when that does come.
Okay, thank you. You've done a very, very detailed diagram there, really thinking about the resources that they would have available to them. So that's really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to room 2. So that was Asia Fianuala and Mags.
So again, we were going to build a raft with plastic bottles. So we were trying to think about the materials the children might have access to at home. So maybe Mags can continue in a minute and just see if you can read my writing, because
No, it's really good. So we thought about, like the previous one, something flat to put on, but we're thinking about things that the kids might have around at home. So we're thinking about ice cream tubs, maybe mushroom, the plastic containers mushrooms come in, those little plastic things that green beans come in, and maybe even the bubble wrap that we get lots of now because of Amazon and lots of deliveries. So thinking about making something that they could test at home. And we thought about, we'd put something in the middle for chickens. The chickens would be in the middle. In the actual one, but we also had a really good, well, Naomi had a great idea about we would have like little hessian sacks to kind of put the soil in to stop it from going into the water. And then we thought about an anchor for blue tack and a string. But I suppose the next step for the kids would be to research what materials in real life that they could use. They're kind of getting the idea that they need something that's going to rise and fall with the water. So
okay. Thank you very much. So as far as thinking about the resources to use, we had the first group trying to think about what the people in Bangladesh would be using, whereas the second group has been thinking about what resources have we got at home that we can use for our model. So that's absolutely fine. 2 different approaches there. Let's just go to room 1 and see Alberto, Famida or Vicky.
Okay, I can talk through if everyone's happy.
Thank you.
So, we come up with pretty much the same design of a floating square that everyone come up with, but we would have it tethered so it would rise and fall with water levels, but it also wouldn't float away. And thinking of in Bangladesh that they keep chickens, we can build most of it using chicken wire because it's quite flexible and strong as well, and it's easy to replace. And that we can have a layer where we can have a substrate like pebbles, soil or sand that roots can then penetrate through, so they're receiving nutrients at the same time.
And also the tethers would be able to anchor it for if we took the average height that water rise and made the poles that were holding them into place have a top end. So they'd float upwards, but they wouldn't float away. So basically anchored, but only moving up and down, not sideways. And having several of those together to make your crop area. And different crops would grow in each line and also at different stages of crop growth.
Perfect. So you've actually got your planting cycle thought out as well, crop rotation and all sorts of things going on there. So that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you for that. So you can see we've got similar sort of ideas, but different groups are focused on slightly different aspects. And that's why it's really good for the children to come back and share for their current thinking, so they can learn from each other and magpie ideas from each other, so to continue and make their ideas even better. So what the children would then be going on to doing is possibly a little bit of extra research. So this could be some individual research about the floods in Bangladesh, such as can we find out how much the river rises and falls in different areas. That's particularly group 3 would be interested in finding that information. And then perhaps going back and thinking about any designs they've got, if they've got more than one design, to think about, you know, which is going to be the best solution, which one are they going to take forward from here. So we've done that researching and planning stage, and now we're getting on to think about actually building and testing our models. So the groups, it might be that individual pupils actually have a go with the things that they find at home. We're all trying to achieve within our group, we're trying to achieve that same thing, but actually different pupils may have different resources at home, so they can try it on their own. Hopefully they can then meet with their group in the sort of equivalent of the breakout room thing, and they can be testing. So they make their own, they can test their own, and then they can take photos or videos which they'll be able to present to their group first, so they can then select of those 4 perhaps design models we've got, which one are we then going to present to the rest of the group. So they're doing a little bit individual, then they're sharing it, and they're choosing which is the best model to take forward to share with the whole group. So we're not able to do that in the timescale that we've got, but we had a little quick go of making some ideas for ourselves. So you can see very limited resources that we've got at home here. I think that is actually possibly a mushroom or possibly tomato containers that we've got, that we've just put some soil in. The first one, the one on the left-hand side there, is sort of some stilts. We decided to put it on some stilts. What we actually found when we tried was it just floated away. So actually inside the tubs there, they've got the lids on the bottom of them instead of on the top. And inside there, we had to put some marbles to weight it down. But obviously, if the water rises higher than that, it may just totally sink, or it may actually float away. So we hadn't actually thought about that tethering idea that you have also thought about. And then the one on the right-hand side there, we've just got it actually floating freestyle. So it's just floating on those bottles, and again it would float away if we didn't tether it down somewhere. So you've actually put a much more thinking, but you can see it's easy to solve it with the stuff that they'll find in their houses. So at that point, we'd want the children, each of the students or the groups, to feed back. As a presentation, we'd want all the members of the group to do some sort of presentation. We don't want one child to be doing nothing. So they have to think about the different roles. Which part are they going to be talking about? Are they going to be talking about their initial designs? Are they going to talk about the different models they've got, or their final solutions? So different students would be responsible for different parts of that presentation. And there's just some ideas of the things that they might want to present. So as part of their CREST Award also, we would expect them to be thinking about the teamwork aspect. What tasks did they do? How well did they work as a group? What did they find out as their research? What were their initial ideas, and what was their model? So you can see if you've got 4 people in a team, they might have those different aspects to feed back in as part of the presentation. I'm just going to now fill you in. Once we've seen and appreciated their solutions, it's then really good to just be able to share with, well, actually, what is the solution that they have adopted in Bangladesh by Tara and the other families living there? And they've actually gone for this idea of a floating garden. So it's a garden that floats, which people can grow their crops on, and they can also put their chickens on if they want. And during the monsoon, it just floats, and they can continue to look after their their crops. So I've just found an image of the floating garden, what it actually looks like. They're about 8 meters by 1 meter, and they're made up of layers of different local materials. So we've got water hyacinth, bamboo and compost. So well done group 3 that we're talking about using bamboo. That is exactly what they would be using. And you can see here that they can grow a range of different crops like group 1 we're talking about. So Mo would probably recognize some of these vegetables and things from his extensive knowledge of the Bangladesh cuisine. And then it's also reusing, they can reuse it at the end as compost. So nothing gets wasted, and I think that's the beauty of this solution. Nothing gets wasted, and it's all stuff that's freely available to them. So it's basically really made a difference to those farmers. They can now grow the crops they need and they can sell them at the market. See that little quote from Tara there. And then the final part of the project is just about them going back and reflecting on the whole process. What have they learnt? And this would be the independent part where they just then complete their CREST passport, their discovery passport. Some pupils might want to take it on further, and they might actually want to do some more work, and then perhaps it might be extended into a bronze award. So the CREST passport just looks like this. It's quite a simple document for them to fill in, and we've just posted the link to it on the chat there. It shouldn't be too onerous. Obviously, if that is the barrier for any of your students achieving the CREST award, then you can be creative about how you ensure that the children have engaged in the project. If it's not appropriate for them to fill the paperwork in, do it a different way. Just ask them to give you some photographs or a video or a verbal video of what they've done. That is absolutely fine. Filling the paperwork in should not be a barrier. You might want to, some of the children might want to go on and extend their understanding about the Sustainable Development Goals. So they might go back and think about that in relation to the floating gardens now. So that might be one possible extension. Or it might be that your students actually want to try something out. So actually they've made their model. Well, actually, let's try growing something on it. Let's actually build a slightly larger scale model that we can they happen to have a pond, but they probably don't, but can they keep it in the washing up bowl? Can they actually grow something? So they'll need to start thinking about the sort of soil. Will it need watering? Won't it need watering? So that's quite a nice extension activity that some of the students might want to go on and do. So that particular activity is the Floating Garden Challenge. I deliberately at the beginning I didn't name it because I didn't want to set you off on the idea of a floating garden, but that's the one it is, and all the resources are there. You've got pupil sheets like the images at the beginning. You've got instructions of how to run it. You've got a PowerPoint. There's certificates you can do if you wish, but obviously once you've submitted it for their CREST award, you will get that certificate as well. So it should be really easy to do, and all the CREST resources have those support materials for you. So just as a quick reminder of the process, it should be about 5 hours in total by the time the students have had time with you, time away, time in their groups, so long as everybody has made a positive engagement and you feel that's the case, and they've put something on the CREST Discovery Passport, or you've assessed them in some other way, then they will be eligible for their CREST Discovery Award. If you want to extend it into the bronze award, they'll need to do a little bit more time on it, and then they would need to complete the bronze passport. It's not called a passport, it's called something else. They'd need to complete that. As far as submitting it is concerned, you just need to submit the names of the students that complete, and then you will be asked to upload 10% sample. So if you've got 100 students doing it, you just need to upload 10 passports or the profiles for the bronze. And so don't forget, obviously, you have got those fully funded, courtesy of the Mayor's London Scientist Programme. And I'd just like you to reflect just before we go and just to share on the chat, what age group is it that you're going to be running it with? It might just be 1 year group, it might be more than 1 year group. How are you thinking it's going to operate? Can you even contemplate this at the moment? When are you going to be doing it? Is it going to be in hour chunks? Is it something that's remote learning? Is it something that you're going to keep until you think the students are back in school? So just your final thoughts on how you're going to run your discovery activity. Okay, so we've obviously got different people doing it in different sizes and scales. So we've got some that might be just 1 year group doing it. Some have got a couple or 3 year groups doing it, and that's absolutely fine. There is no limit on how many students can do the day. It's just about the capacity that you've got to deliver it within the school. Don't know what I was going to say. It's eluding me. Okay, and we've got some people thinking actually they might go on and be able to do a bronze as well. Yes, it is about the timing, and unfortunately we're really at that crux moment where we don't quite know when students will be back full time. You need to be flexible, be adaptable. Is there option for teams? I'm not sure. They do work as a team, if that's what you mean, Alberto. If there's any other questions you'd like to ask before we leave, please do post them onto the chat. Yes, we can post the link to the bronze resources, can we? Yeah, so Microsoft Teams should work because it works very similarly to Zoom. So you can do it exactly the same way, where I think with Microsoft Teams, as I recall, you don't have breakout rooms. You'd have to give them a separate meeting where when they're not working with you, they can join that meeting. So you might ask them to have a team name, and then you can set up a meeting for that particular team, and then they can work out, and then they can just join that team, and it will just be that group. But you would also be able to drop into each of the rooms. Oh, they've got breakout rooms now. Okay, I didn't realize that. Yes, we will send the PowerPoint out to you. Okay, so thank you very much. I would just like to say thank you for attending this evening and giving up your time, and do have a good half term.